Hey guys, my name is Matsumo, and today I wanted to take a look at Battlefield Hardline's single player. So far, I think the multiplayer is excellent. I'm having a blast. I can already see myself spending hundreds of hours with it, but I wanted to find out for myself if the single player was any good. It's the other half of the game. Battlefield has never really been known for its campaigns. Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, let's be honest, they were pretty terrible. They really weren't all that impressive. But the fact that Visceral is now at the helm and they've created some solid single-player games in the past, I had high hopes that this was going to be the exception. I really was crossing my fingers that this was finally going to be the Battlefield game that had a compelling and amazing single-player experience. And while there are a few redeeming qualities here and there are some things about it that I really did enjoy. In general, I was fairly disappointed by it. The one thing that we should talk about right at the beginning is the gameplay. This is the thing that you're going to be spending the most time in Battlefield Hardline. You would hope that this would be phenomenal. And one mechanic that I just don't understand why Visceral added into the game is that every enemy, and I mean every enemy, is going to be spotted on your mini-map. You do have a gadget that will allow you to spot them even further, which essentially gives you wall hacks, but you don't necessarily need to do this. I played on the hardest difficulty that you can play on for your first playthrough, and I never felt challenged because I could essentially stare at my minimap. I knew exactly where all of the enemy AI were looking the entire time, and I could ghost around taking every single one of them out individually. To make matters worse, and what honestly made the game trivialized, is that you also have the ability to handcuff the enemy. This makes sense. This sounds fine in concept because you are playing as a cop. You would assume you would have this ability, but basically all that you have to do is that if you come across 1 to 3 enemies, you can run up to them. You don't have to be stealthy at all. You can literally charge at them at the last second, flash your badge, and then they'll all put up their hands. It turns into a little mini game where you have to spaz them out, pointing your gun at every single one of them, but then run up to one, handcuff them, and then repeat that process until every single one of them are down on the ground. The issue that I have with it is that, once again, this sounds fine in concept, is that it makes it way, and I mean way too easy to clear out an entire room and just makes that stealth gameplay ridiculously easy. Here is probably the best illustration of how absurd these mechanics work in combination. I'm in a warehouse, there are loads of enemies nearby, but because I know exactly where everyone is on the minimap, I can basically ghost around with no danger to myself. I'll never round a corner and be caught off guard with an enemy looking straight at me. That doesn't happen in Battlefield Hardline single player because of this mechanic. And so I can essentially move around unhindered, take people out individually with my stun gun, but if I ever come into a confrontation with 2 or 3 guards that are directly next to each other, where I know that a stun gun isn't going to get the job done, I can just run up, flash my badge, and take them out silently. Even though there might be 10 or 20 other guards in the room, only 4 feet away, because for whatever reason, flashing your badge and handcuffing the enemy doesn't make a ruckus whatsoever, it is an easy way at stealthing through and really just trivializing the game. Like, I never felt exposed, I never felt challenged, simply because these mechanics were in the game. That being said though, if you don't want to cheese through the entire campaign, you don't want to go the stealthy route, you want to go guns a-blazing and have more of the traditional Battlefield or first-person shooter experience, then I highly recommend going in guns a-blazing, because then it actually presents a challenge. Things become more difficult, and in my opinion, that's when the game becomes more satisfying. It's clear to me that Visceral wanted to give players the agency to approach combat however they wanted in Hardline. I got a lot of vibes of the Far Cry series, where you could basically use all of your gadgets in very creative ways to kill your enemies. Once again, you can go the stealthy route, that's available. You can be that ghost, that silent killer. You can go guns a-blazing or of a mix of the two, but they really want to give players the agency and the repertoire to make these missions their playground. The reason why I said that this is very similar to the Far Cry series is that they borrow a lot of the same mechanics. There is an alarm system where if you make your presence known, a guard is going to run up and hit the alarm system, causing a flood of enemies to swarm on in. You can use a grappling hook to get a better vantage point of the battlefield, giving you a nice sniper perch where you can start to take people out from long range. You can use C4 or environmental hazards to take out the enemy. There's a lot of different ways that you can approach the combat, but it doesn't necessarily do anything better than Far Cry or other games that have attempted this type of system. That's not necessarily a bad thing because I appreciated the fact that there was a lot of ways that I could approach combat. Shooting at the enemy was fun. I liked that I had a wide arsenal to choose from, but if you were expecting them to innovate or do something a little bit better than other first-person shooters that have come before, then you're gonna be out of luck with a hardline single player. As for the story component, and something that I was hoping might be the saving grace here, it starts off by taking itself very seriously. Visceral was clearly going for the serious cop drama that you might see on cable television. Even the missions are labeled as episodes, and while it's decent storytelling, it's no HBO True Detective, you know, I didn't really have any major complaints. It wasn't amazing, but it wasn't god-awful. After those first couple of missions, though, that's when things become a little bit more lighthearted. You meet characters like Boomer and Tyson. I love Boomer. Every time he was on screen, I was laughing. I mean, the dialogue between him and all the other characters was top notch, and if they had that same lighthearted feel throughout the entire campaign, or whatever you want to call it, in my opinion, the game just would have been better off. Admittedly, there is a twist that I wasn't expecting. It wasn't mind-blowing or anything like that, but it was a nice change of pace. It mixed up the story to something that I was not expecting in the slightest, and they also did set up a Hardline 2 at the very end. Who knows if there is going to be a Hardline 2, but they have that option if they want to go down that route. But once again, I felt like, yeah, a serious crime drama is okay, but I just felt like in general, if they went with more of the casual tone, if they didn't take themselves as seriously and went more of the lighthearted route, like they did with the Bad Company series, the single player story just would have been better off. But overall, while a lot of you at this point must assume that I despise the single player because I've basically just been criticizing it throughout today's video, I did enjoy the campaign. Yes, there are a lot of things that I didn't really agree with, especially the stealth system and those mechanics. I don't really understand why they did it, at least from my standpoint. But in general, this is leaps and bounds better than Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4's single player. Miles ahead. I enjoyed the story, at least somewhat, if you're looking for an average crime drama, especially in a video game. There are not a lot of cops versus criminal style of video games out there. As long as you don't go into this with high expectations, I think this is one of the biggest reasons why I was disappointed. I just went into it thinking that it was going to be better than it was. If you go into it thinking that it's just going to be an average cop drama that you would see on cable television, you're probably going to get some enjoyment out of Battlefield Hardline. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you've had a chance to play the single player, let me know your thoughts. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you agree with a lot of things that I mentioned in today's video? Let me know down below. But until tomorrow, have a good one and take it easy.